Chris O'Connor here. Join our fabulous curmudgeonly community on Facebook at facebook.com/group/curmudgeonrock. Also look out for a Spotify playlist dedicated to this episode. Now, let's get started.
This is the Curmudgeon Rock Report, and this is your podcast made by rock geek iconoclastic outsiders for rock geek iconoclastic outsiders. For those of you who lament that rock music has gone the way of jazz and slipped into niche genre status, we are here to keep that flame alive by providing insight, analysis, recommendations, and honest takes, not hot takes. And hey, there's a good chance you'll learn some rock history you never knew before. Ah yes, B-sides. In this age of digital distribution and online music streaming, the notion of B-sides to singles is becoming increasingly irrelevant. Yet in terms of physical media, the idea of B-sides is one of the most endearing and geek-centric concepts among, well, music geeks, particularly in rock music. The idea is this: a band/artist records and releases an album. From that album, they choose a song to be the single or the A-side to promote the album and get played on commercial radio. In physical media, this single would come in the form of a vinyl record, a cassette, or a CD. The B-side would be the song you can hear on the flip side of the physical media. This song could be an outtake from the band's/artist's album sessions, or it could be an album track, i.e. another song from the album. Some bands/artists, however, took great care with their B-sides, taking them as an opportunity to thank their fans for being loyal and buying a song that they were going to buy a second time whenever the album would come out. This is especially a proud tradition in Great Britain, with bands throughout the years such as the Beatles, the Kinks, the Who, Led Zeppelin, the Jam, the Clash, Joy Division, Oasis, and Radiohead putting out some of their greatest songs as B-sides. It wasn't just the British, though, as plenty of US bands/artists would reward fans buying singles by making B-sides out of stellar outtakes or covers. REM, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Pavement, and Smashing Pumpkins, to name just a few. On this episode, we're going to count down numbers 50 through 1, our picks for the greatest B-sides the genre of rock has ever given us. Our only qualifier is that the B-sides cannot be album tracks. So, welcome to the Curmudgeon Rock Report as we bring you rock's greatest
So Art,
B-sides.
let's get right to it. Are you ready to enter the parallel universe?
Yes, basically the parallel universe, as our longtime listeners know. It is our new album review segment in a parallel universe where rock music is still a big part of the pop cultural zeitgeist. These albums and artists would be huge. Instead, they are in our real universe.
and granted, the parallel universe is not so bad. It's not so flourishing that Grand Funk Railroad is on the Billboard instead of Taylor Swift. It's not quite that bad, but the stadiums, the billboards, Rolling Stone, the radio, it's all dedicated to the rock and the rock and roll and to great music.
And the good hip hop and the good EDM.
Yes, and the good hip hop and the good EDM. Drake is bottom of the list in the parallel universe for sure. So with that said, we do new and newish records. Arturo, who are you covering this week or in this episode for the parallel universe?
Yes, I'm doing the album that technically came out last year. We're still in January.
Yep.
By Sufjan Stevens. It's called Javelin. Now, I'm not generally a fan of Sufjan Stevens, who's been giving us his brand of indie folk and experimental pop for over 20 years now. He does have his moments, though. Back in 2015, he pared his indulgences down and produced the album Carrie and Lowell, a stripped-down affair with very autobiographical lyrics relating to his family and probably the most open he's ever been about his personal life. His new album, Javelin, doesn't quite reach the terrific heights of that former album, but there is quite a bit to like here. And in a parallel universe where rock music was still a thing, this album would get some airplay. You can describe the Stevens album as intricately arranged progressive folk. But what sells it, though, are some of the prettiest melodies and affecting lyrics Stevens has produced to date. The stark confessional nature of Will Anybody Ever Love Me is one of the standouts, as is the sprawling, epic shit talk. The
Hmm.
album ends with a pleasant surprise, a surprisingly lovely cover of Neil Young's There's a World. It isn't a masterpiece, as there are some duff tracks in the album's first half, but it's easily one of Stevens' best albums. A solid 3.5 star album. Chris?
Yeah, I would agree. Solid 3.5 star record. Very really pretty record. A
Yeah.
lot of pretty production, a lot of pretty songs, and I'm a huge fan of the title track,
Mm,
which is Javelin, and in parentheses to have and to hold. It's
right.
the 2 minute song, but it's remarkably poignant
Yeah.
in its visions of loss and of, well, not just that. It goes from revenge fantasy to suicide lament.
Right.
And I mean, it's just really evocative and just really, it's just a beautiful and tragic type of song. So I'm a huge fan of that. Yeah, you're right that there's a world cover that comes out of nowhere, but it's really good. And yeah, I think you kind of mentioned it that the album takes a little while to get going, but
Yeah.
by like song five, song six, it actually becomes really strong.
Yeah.
And it is kind of shocking to me that we're talking about Sufjan Stevens in 2024. Only in the sense, well, one, he's been around forever, but two, Illinois is one of those records, and that was his record. What was it, 2007 that he came out with that?
I think it's 2005.
Yeah, somewhere in there. I mean, it all blends together. I wasn't big into music at the I had kind of burned out, so the 2005 to 2008 is all a big blur to me. But I always thought Illinois was an incredibly overrated record,
Hmm.
and didn't deserve. I mean, there was almost like a worship at the altar to it. I mean, it made the Shins worship altar seem downright quaint.
Yeah.
In regards, you remember, Oh Inverted World had its cult.
Right.
Uh, but so given that record to me is so overrated, I tend to, I've been talking a lot about it lately because I've been reading about it, confirmation bias, that
Hmm.
there's a part of me that just wants to write off Sufjan Stevens as insufferable. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, insufferable.
Yeah.
But this record's good. This record is good. And so
Mm.
I'm happily recommending it as well from here. Now, Arturo, to transition a little bit, remember a few episodes back when you admitted that you were cheating a little when you selected Mitski's The Land is Hospitable and So Are We for the parallel universe?
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
You're
Uh,
cheating too.
I'm basically doing the same thing here. I'll be covering Little Yachty's Let's Start Here. Little Yachty, up until now, has been what I would consider a second-rate trap music hip hop artist.
Mm.
He splits his time between Atlanta and New York. He's an associate of the guys from Migos, Offset and The Late Takeoff and a few others. And up until now, his stuff has been kind of corny, and I guess you could call it pop trap, which is like, just calling it pop track is yuck. But he is a guy who's been successful. He's got at least three top 10 records on the Billboard 200, which doesn't really mean much anymore. So let's start here. Was released about a year ago. It debuted at number 9 and sold 36,000 copies that week. For reference, back in like 25 years ago, the Backstreet Boys topped the Billboard 200 with 2.1 million copies. And so 36,000 probably wouldn't have even made the 200. If it did, it would have just barely made the cut.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows that that's not exactly the best monitor. But
Yeah. Physical media is practically
yeah,
dead,
yeah, exactly.
except for the vinyl junkies.
Yeah, exactly. And so, so that's to say that this guy does have a profile. However, the reason we're talking about it is this new record is a shockingly great curveball
Mm.
that I just discovered in the last week, and it's been my driving music for the past few days. If I had to do my top 10 over again, remember how we said in that episode that top 10s are a moment in time? Well, if we could extend it to now, I think it would put it at number 4. So let's describe this record. This is in which a trap music guy decides to get inspired by psychedelic rock and neo soul,
Yeah.
and puts it and splices them together to get this really great, weird, almost in some ways spooky and meditative mix of really interesting songs and interesting soundscapes, and probably the best sample of Bob Ross ever used at the end of one of the more sunnier psychedelic songs on the record. And so this album really it's kind of a disorienting effect that this guy obviously has been very, very heavily influenced by both Tame Impala and Pink Floyd. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine that, there's a mix for you. And
Yeah.
there's very, very little rapping on this record, which I guess is a good thing. And there's a lot of singing through filters and probably some auto tune going on. Uh, but it really, really works. I mean, this guy, he's much more enjoyable, and I think much more fitting of this type of style than of trap. And I think in some ways he started to find a real voice.
Mm.
And it's one of those albums too that when you first hear it, it's a little too long. It could probably be about 4 songs shorter because some of
Yeah.
the songs get a little samey towards the end.
Yeah.
But it's
You're
the
right.
kind of album that at first it's kind of a WTF record, but then
Mhm.
it's the kind of album to listen to and to absorb while you're driving or working out or napping or cleaning the kitchen. You need to be doing something to truly appreciate it and let it seep in, because boy does it sneak up on us. Highlights: album opener, The Black Seminole, and album closer, Reach the Sunshine. This is where Yachty gets his most freaky deaky, and really evokes Floyd, especially, and even 13th. Well, what would you say? Kind of like early '70s Prague in some ways. He kind of gets
Yeah.
there, and it's kooky stuff, but it's really, really strong. He's got a nice neo soul song in the middle of the record called "We Saw the Sun." That's the one with the distorted sample of Bob Ross talking through one of his paintings at the end.
Right.
He's got a couple of solid R&B slash rock hybrid workouts. I've Officially Lost Vision and The Alchemist are
Mm.
probably my 2 favorites there. And then Should I Be is got some really compelling psychedelic noise that surrounds a catchy electro pop tune. So,
Mm.
like I said, it does run a little too long, but I will say this: it's the second most adventurous album of any kind that I've heard over the last year. I would put Scaring the Hose as more adventurous. Scaring the Hose by JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown.
Yeah.
A little bit ahead of this as far as adventurousness, but this is it's a shocking curveball, but it's a welcome curveball. Arturo, what do you say about this record?
Yeah. This album is way more listenable than the JPEG Mafia record. That's number one. Yeah, I think that album is total trash. But anyway, this album is an album that I respect and whose audacity I admire more than I actually like. This guy, Lil Yachty, he was a joke for a few years. He, like you said, second-rate trap hip hop, or even third-rate. Like he was really not that good. But it's a good thing that he decided to put a curveball into his career and step away from what he's known for. I think about half of it, or a little more than half of it, is a little too contrived and forced, and he's trying too hard. But there are a couple of really good songs. I like the Black Seminole.
Yeah.
Seminole. I think that's probably the best song on the album,
Oh, I do
and
too.
I really like We Saw the Sun as well. That's a really good song. But overall, yeah, it's okay. It's a record I respect and admire more than I love. Hopefully, this will be a transitional record for him to really fine tune that psychedelic rock and neo soul impulse that he has right
Yeah.
now.
No,
And
I agree with you.
hopefully the next record will be a better version of this.
Chris here again. Arturo and I have differing feelings about the subscription streaming service Spotify. While he likes to rail against the algorithmic component, I like the ability to find and then manage a personal catalog of music. The program is especially great for assembling playlists. Well, guess what? We've assembled a playlist to accompany this episode. The playlist features a healthy mix of all the music we describe and analyze during the episode. Think of it as a soundtrack to your curmudgeonly life. Find the link in this episode's description. And also become a member of our curmudgeonly community on Facebook if you haven't done so already. Let's now return to our regularly scheduled programming. B-sides, everyone. B-sides. Obviously, as Arturo described at the top, the B-side is the other side of the single, and it is a place that a lot of artists keep some of their best work for grand effect, or at least used to. Here's what I love about B-sides. One, they tend to be short, and two, they tend to be poppy as hell. They tend to be good little songs. They're not throwaways. They're the best ones are fun nuggets, and not only that, they're not afraid to actually say something in addition to the record. And a lot of times, the B-sides are better. These 50 that we're talking about, in a lot of instances, these songs are better than anything else on the records. There's not wasted notes. That's the thing. Right. B-sides equal no wasted notes in general.
Well, some are. I mean, these are the top 50 that aren't wasted notes.
Yeah, I was going to say, but you get a lot of 3-minute, 4-minute long pop songs. Sometimes you get 11-minute, slop, but I think that's a rarity. So that's why I love B-sides, man. 3 minutes and a dream, 3 minutes and a dream, baby. So with that said, we've got 50 of these to run through. The lightning round starts now. Arturo, number 50.
Number 50, The Rolling Stones with Dandelion, the B-side to the standalone single We Love You from 1967. Now, the Stones weren't really a B-sides kind of band. Most of their B-sides were just album tracks that they cobbled together to throw in there, However, released right smack in the middle of the Summer of Love of 1967, and when Mick Jagger and Keith Richards were in and out of court following their infamous drug busts from earlier in the year, this song, much more than the oddball A-side, We Love You, proves that the Stones could offer lovely, sun-kissed psychedelic pop as well as Donovan or the Beach Boys. Chris?
Yeah, this is a very good impression of the Beatles here.
True.
It plays like a George Harrison tune from that era, or maybe from 68. It has that. So they, if they were competing with the Beatles, they didn't usually show it. Here they do. I think it's as good as anything on her Satanic Majesty's request. Honestly,
their Satanic Majesty's request.
Their
not just hers, theirs as well.
Theirs. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say this is a pronoun heavy area. It's there. So, but very, very good song. It's lovely pop. George Harrison reverence. There you go.
Number 49, Franz Ferdinand with All For You, Sophia, the B-side to Take Me Out from 2004. This Scottish indie rock band was huge in the mid-noughties, or aughts, if you want to go with the American parlance. And this is the B-side to their biggest hit single. Funky as hell with a catchy chorus that falls just short of being overly twee. This track also shows lead singer Alex Kapranos utilizing a different vocal affectation than his usual lower register. It's rare that a B-side epitomizes a band's sound, but Franz Ferdinand's funky hybrid of Gang of Four and early Duran Duran reaches a peak here. Chris?
Yeah, and here I think it's a little bit more Duran Duran than Gang of Four. Take Me Out is one of the best songs of this entire century. I love it, and so this is a fitting B-side to that. It's just as punchy, though it's more traditionally dancey. And so and like you said, the vocals are a little bit surprising, almost cheeky. In some respects, and so good song. Folks, go check out Franz Ferdinand's first 3 records. Really. If you're not familiar with them, they're one of their formula, and Arturo hit it perfectly. They just rock, and they're funky. You can dance to them too. And funky. They're one of the great dance rock outfits, one of the great white dance rock outfits of the last 50 years, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right, number 48, Clinic, the band Clinic, and the B-side is DT, the B-side to Monkey on Your Back from 1998. Now, this British band is probably the most obscure band on this list. Yeah. They had their moment back in 2002 with their excellent album, Walking with Thee. This B-side, dating back to the band's early days in the late 1990s, simply rocks with vicious abandon and cheeky sing-along backing vocals. The stop-start movement toward the end gives the track an extra push. Chris?
Yeah, this is definitely balls out rock. It's also a definite precursor to the energy and the spirit of Walking with Thee. And
Yeah.
I was a huge fan of Walking with Thee. I mean, I
Yeah.
think you remember summer of 2002. I kind of wore out that disc, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so this is indicative of where that band was going. And it's more lo-fi than what they were
Yeah.
doing on Walking
Right.
with Thee, but it's in that wheelhouse. So yeah,
Yeah.
good pick, good pick.
Yeah. All right, next. Number 47, Talking Heads. I Wish You Wouldn't Say That, the B-side to Psycho Killer from 1977. When Talking Heads emerged from the grimy scene of New York City's Bowery area clubs in the mid 1970s, they stunned and befuddled people with their thoroughly fresh take on rock and roll and innovative approach to songwriting and melody composition. Little did people know that this band, originally based in Providence, Rhode Island, would go on to not just become huge on both a critical and commercial level, but also as a profound influence on alternative and indie rock for multiple generations. This B-side from their 1977 debut single is raw as hell and almost sounds like a demo, but you can already hear David Byrne's visionary genius bubbling under the surface. Number 46, Weezer with Michael and Carly, spelled weirdly, Mykel and Carly, Carli. It's the B-side to Undone the Sweater Song from 1994. Now, remember when Weezer were a good band?
Yep,
I do.
I do too.
This song, the B-side to their first hit on rock radio, is really an affecting heavy pop ditty that sees frontman Rivers Cuomo reminiscing about a pair of childhood friends who died in a car accident. Early Weezer had this endearing ability to take traumatic moments in life and transform them into pop rock epiphanies. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. Worth noting that this is the lead song on disc 2 of the deluxe edition of the Blue album, from '94. And
Yeah.
this song, a couple of notes. One, it is very, very Matt Sharp. It's
Yeah.
almost as if the Reynolds are being born in the course of this song.
Right.
It's also very Pinkerton in theme and crunch.
Yeah.
It's strange because it could work on the Blue album, but I think it would work better as a Pinkerton track. And so I think they, as you said, they had those sort of dark themes about dealing with trauma, which is
Right.
which is why Pinkerton became such a, it was like one of the first social media breakout hits, like very early social media. Like we're
Yeah.
talking prehistoric social media from like 2000.
Basically
Uh,
blogs and internet
yeah,
blogs of 1997 or no,
yeah,
later than 96. It was 99 when that
it was
album really
99,
started.
2000. It was around
Yeah.
Napster and
Yeah.
yeah. Basically, that was even pre MySpace.
Yeah.
But anyway, really great song and surprising. It could have worked on the album.
Yeah.
I
Could
think
have.
there's a reason why it leads disc 2
Yeah.
of the deluxe edition of the Blue album.
Right.
So there you go. Number 45.
Number 45, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs with Yeah New York, the B-side to Date with the Night from 2003. People tend to forget how fresh, invigorating, and original sounding the early Yeah Yeah Yeahs were.
Yeah,
And this
really.
B-side is a thrilling, lyrically minimalist ode to their native New York City. Rocking, sexy, quick and to the point. This is quintessential Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and it reeks of authentic New York sleaze. Chris?
Yes, it does. Great energy, befitting of the city, and it kind of goes to what we talked about in our episode where we talked about what was it, 40 songs from New York City,
Yeah.
about New York City. That
Yeah.
it kind of goes to there. There's something that lends itself about that place that really lends itself to great anthem writing,
Yep.
and this is a great anthem. Especially, it's really indicative of where the city was in terms of its rock and roll energy and rock and roll revivalism
Right.
at least in Brooklyn of that era, that
Mm.
2001 to 2004, that was kind of the
Yeah.
when the Strokes and James Murphy first were rising up, and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs were part of that as well. So
Right.
indicative of that. And yeah, like you said, early Yeah Yeah Yeahs, they had this kind of a heaviness to them, but also the artsiness of the guitar really stands out
Yeah.
for sure.
Number 44, Pious with Fatso Forgotso, the B-side to their standalone single and Black Sabbath cover Into the Void from 1996. This is the last release by stoner metal band Caius before guitarist songwriter Josh Homme transitioned himself to forming Queens of the Stone Age. It's a song of two halves. It starts with a monstrous, strutting, Led Zeppelin style riff and a powerful rhythm track before drastically shifting gears midway through and settles into this groovy mid tempo jam. You can smell the cannabis smoke emanating from this scorcher of a track, and it finds Homme right between the heaviosity of Caius and the more groove oriented music he would explore with Queens of the Stone Age. Chris?
Yeah, good call. Good preview of Queens of the Stone Age and their vibe. I'll say this: the riff is on loan from the devil. The solo is the devil.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really, the second half where it just kind of just cranks.
Yeah.
And this is the rare B-side. It's 8 minutes and 31 seconds. It's the rare long one that works.
Right.
That it's
Right.
not just a throwaway, and it's not just slop to tack on. It actually works
Right.
on its own accord.
Right. Number 43, REM with Ghostwriter. It's a cover by the New York City art rock techno electronica outfit Suicide, and it's the B-side to Orange Crush from 1988. REM took an interesting approach to B-sides. Usually they used them as a platform for their often superb covers of other people's songs, and this is one of the very best. They take a song, like I said, by the experimental New York art punk band Suicide and completely transform it into sweaty funk rock. What was an avant-garde piece of synthesizer music is brought down to earth by Peter Buck's grimy, dirty guitar work and Michael Stipe's deadpan vocal delivery. It's a shame they never brought this puppy out live back then because it kicks ass. Chris?
Yeah, it does kick ass. It actually sounds like a leftover from Life's Rich Pageant. It has that kind of
Yeah.
kind of shticky energy to it.
Yeah.
So they cover a song that has the line, "Baby, baby, baby, he's looking so cute," and people actually wondered about Michael Stipe's sexuality. Yeah, that it was that for some reason it was a source of speculation when it was pretty fucking obvious the entire time.
Yeah,
If you really consider it. And so it's definitely gnarlier than the stuff that made the cut for Green.
Right.
And it's kind of a weird choice as a B-side for Orange Crush. I think, like you said, that there was if the B-sides were more than them sort of putting their spin on covers, if that was kind of a use for B-sides, then it makes sense. Otherwise, it's just kind of like one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah. Number 42, Ty Segall with Mother Lemonade, B-side to The Hill from 2012. The guy this podcast refers to as Rock and Roll Jesus hasn't made a good album in a few years, but this B-side comes from Ty's peak period. The man has a gift for infectious riffs, and Mother Lemonade is no exception, augmented by an equally infectious vocal melody and chorus. Imagine T-Rex on steroids. Chris?
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Another way to put it is, what if L7 covered the Brian Jonestown Massacre?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's extremely grunge reverent in how it comes together, but it also has that kind of throwback Jonestown rhythm to it. Has a little bit of a swing. So Rock and Roll Jesus, goes full throttle, and he's a good boy.
Number 41, PJ Harvey with Somebody's Down, Somebody's Name, the B-side to Down by the Water from 1995. The first of two B-sides by Polly Jean Harvey on this list. This track comes from PJ's absolute peak period in the 1990s when she was virtually reinventing blues rock with a defiantly feminine take on carnal passion without missing any of the visceral power that men have infused the genre with for so many years. This is Harvey at her sweaty, demented best. It's a bit jammy and meandering, which explains its non-album status, but it's still excellent. Chris?
which is weird because I think it still would have worked on the record. I mean, I think that the guitar work on the record is incredible with the steel
Yeah.
guitar and the acoustic slide stuff
Right,
going on
right.
there. It really is worth noting. This is included on a 3-hour collection called B-Sides, Demos, and Rarities that Polly
Yeah.
Harvey released in 2022,
Mm.
which is a really great set. Definitely worth checking out. And and I think, as you said, it's her strongest era, and it's definitely true to the swampy spirit of "To
Yeah.
Bring You My Love," and
Right.
yeah, that album "To Bring You My Love." So
Right.
good, great stuff, and great vocal performance too.
Or oh, she's still a phenomenal singer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 40, Noel Gallagher, or Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds, however you want to call it, with Dead in the Water, B-side to Holy Mountain from 2017. Recorded live at a radio station in Dublin, this is the former Oasis head honcho showing a musical side of himself that he rarely ever did or has since. Yes, it's a romantic breakup song, but Gallagher really plumbs the depths of emotional pain with evocative lyrics and a fittingly pained vocal delivery. Hands down, it's one of the man's finest ballads. Younger brother Liam could not have sung it this well. Chris?
No, or sung it at all. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I could see it. This is as pretty as you'd expect from Noel Gallagher in ballad mode.
Yeah.
And I do like the fact that he was brave enough to put out the sort of the live,
Hmm.
sort of the live take of it,
Hmm.
because that couldn't have been easy,
Yeah.
bearing himself like that. So pretty brave. It's a brave song anyway, but a brave choice to release it
Mm.
in this form.
Yeah. Number 39, U2 with Silver and Gold, the studio version, the B-side to Where the Streets Have No Name from 1987. This podcast is an unashamedly U2 friendly podcast. And yes, like it or not, this is one of two U2 B-sides on this countdown. Deal with it. This is the studio version of the track, whose live version is more famous and can be heard on the band's Rattle and Hum album. Admittedly, the live version is a little superior, even with Bono's mid-song rant about apartheid in South Africa and telling Edge to play the blues. But this studio version has a more haunted feeling to it, with the Edge's echo-filled guitar work alongside Adam Clayton's ultra groovy bass line. Can't be denied. Chris?
Yeah, otherwise known as Bullet the Blue Sky Part Two. Really strong polemic rock by
Yeah.
U2. I've always been a huge fan of the opening line, "In the shit house, a shotgun."
Yeah.
I think that's clever alliteration on Bono's part, and it's an earworm for sure.
Right.
It's also available on there's and this is kind of a theme. You'll see that anytime an artist releases a deluxe edition of an album, chances are its best B-sides are going to be there featured prominently. And hey, lo and behold, the deluxe version of the Joshua Tree has Silver and Gold on it.
Mm-hmm. And it should.
Yep.
Number 38, Yoko Ono with Listen, the Snow is Falling, B-side to John Lennon's Happy Christmas, War is Over from 1971. Now, there are a lot of Yoko Ono haters out there, particularly among the baby boomer generation who can't get over their racism and sexism. And it's fair to criticize Yoko's screechy, screamy vocal attack on many of her more outre musical attempts. However, two things. First, she actually was a classically trained pianist who was better on the instrument than any of the four Beatles.
Yep.
And one can argue she should have stuck to that. and second, she had her moments of lovely, listener-friendly pop bliss. This is probably the best one she ever produced, or that Lennon helped her produce. If you heard this song for the first time and didn't know who did it, you would never guess it's Yoko Ono. Chris?
Well, I mean, with the exception of the first 20 seconds, the way it starts, it's kind of
Yeah.
it starts with this really weird a cappella bit from Yoko, and it sounds like Yoko. But once you get past that, it's really, really, really lovely. And a couple of notes: Harry Nilsson covered it, and so did Galaxy 500.
Yes.
The
Their
latter,
version is better.
yeah, their version is fucking great. It rocks out halfway through, and has an
Yeah.
extended and solo and jam. And then here's a question to ponder. Would you say that this might be a prehistoric shoegazer song?
Maybe it's not trippy enough for shoegazer. He doesn't have the heavy
Yeah.
guitar reverb for it.
No, no. What I mean is, it just in terms of the form of the song and
Mm,
put the shoegazer guitars behind it, and it's like
yeah,
classic shoegaze.
sure,
I
maybe.
think. I think.
Yeah.
I think so.
All right, number 37, The Stone Roses with All Across the Sands, the B-side to Sally Cinnamon from 1987. The B-side to one of the finest British rock singles of the 1980s is almost its equal with its lilting, fluid beauty. There were other UK jangle pop bands before the Stone Roses, but none except for the Smiths did it better. And once the band augmented their sound with funk and dance beats a year later, they would become unstoppable. But this song finds them surfing the clouds in blissful jangle pop heaven. Chris?
Yep, they are in Jangle Pop Heaven, and I'll say I wasn't familiar with the song before we started doing this episode. One of the
Yeah.
few that I wasn't,
Yeah.
and at first I said to myself, this kind of evokes the Cranberries, and then I'm like, wait a second, the Cranberries
No.
kind of evoke the Stone Roses.
Right.
Yeah, I have to get that right. And then again, it's like so did most of the British bands that followed in their wake.
Right.
Even you remove some of the they're more famous for the electronic stuff that they melded starting in 88, 89 there. But at the heart of it, these guys just wrote damn good pop tunes.
Yeah, they did. They really did.
They're beautiful melodies, sneakily beautiful melodies, and
Yeah.
here's an example of one of those.
Right. Next, number 36, Black Rebel Motorcycle Club with High Low, the B-side to Stop from 2003. Perhaps the most underrated band of the noughties slash the aughts, San Francisco's Black Rebel Motorcycle Club had a 5-album streak from 2001 through 2010 that was so great. The brilliance overflowed into B-sides and outtake compilations. Their brand of dark, sultry, smoky alternative rock reached a feverish pitch on this mesmerizing track, arguably better or even much better than the A-side it's supporting. Chris?
Yeah, you must have read my notes because I refer to them as one of the great unsung bands,
Yeah.
or hard rock bands anyway, of the entire 2000s, as in from 2000 to now.
Yeah.
We can't sing their praises enough here at the Curmudgeon Rock Report. I mean, they're just great. And this song is a monument to gnarliness and hypnosis
Yes.
simultaneously,
Yeah.
which is a neat feat.
Right. Absolutely. Number 35, The Who with Circles, B-side to Substitute from 1966. For a band known for its superb run of singles throughout the 1960s, they had a surprisingly low number of great B-sides. This one, however, is easily the best of them, with guitarist songwriter Pete Townshend's penchant for evoking psychological turmoil and emotional angst rarely more solidly portrayed, especially when encouraged and buoyed by the powerhouse rhythm section of John Entwistle and Keith Moon. It's a girl done me wrong song, but it sounds and feels way more important than that. And that's one of Townshend's genius gifts. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. And it fits really, really nicely with Substitute. It
Yeah.
has that similar swing and similar primitiveness to the
And
recording,
lyrical theme too.
and lyrical themes. And so, yeah,
Right.
this is Townsend at his most like maudlin as a lyricist. I mean, it's like happy music with maudlin lyrics.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting mix. Also can be found on an extended version of the album My Generation from 1965, from late
Mm.
1965. So you can find it there near the end.
Yeah.
It's like a 30 track, the
Yeah.
one available on Spotify is like 30 tracks. This is one of those.
All these repackages always have the B-sides to
Yep,
them.
yep, true enough. But we're just doing a public service and letting
Yeah.
folks know where they can find these albums
Right.
or find these songs.
Right. Number 34, The Kinks with King Kong, the B-side to Plastic Man, a standalone single from 1969. The socio-cultural commentary and character sketches that mark the best of Ray Davies' songs are absent here, but it hardly matters as this B-side finds the Kinks getting back to stomping riff rock, proving they could always do it when they wanted to, or could have always done it when they wanted to. Awesome chord progression, sing-along chorus, la 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 backing vocals. It has all the hallmarks of classic Kinks. Chris?
Yes, it does. And it also has the lyric, I'm King Kong and I have a hydrogen bomb. So it's a very very funny song, very very tongue in cheek, and very clearly this song is from the Village Green Preservation Society sessions.
Mhm.
It has that kind of feel to it, and it's the same kind of acoustics.
Yeah.
Actually think that this song belongs higher on the list. I'd have put it up in the 20s or even the
Wow.
teens. I think it's
Okay.
great. I think it's a great song, and
Yeah.
obviously the Kinks being one of the best bands of all time,
Yeah.
just a killer song to me. I'm really enjoyable.
Right. Number 33, Smashing Pumpkins with Hello Kitty Cat, the B-side to Today from 1993. Remember when Smashing Pumpkins were a good band?
I do.
I do. And this outtake from their classic Siamese Dream album, relegated to a B-side, is simply ferocious. Loud, heavy, rocking, melodic, majestic. Everything that was good about early Pumpkins is here to be enjoyed. Chris?
Yeah, and you can also find this on a very underrated B-sides collection from 1994 called Pisces Iscariot,
Yeah, yeah,
which they released on the heels of Siamese Dream. And
right.
I mean, the album is most famous for a really horrendously bad cover of Fleetwood Mac's Landslide.
Yeah, yeah,
But the rest of it is fantastic. So this is one of those songs that proves just how great of a drummer Jimmy Chamberlain was.
right. This is Billy Corgan's secret weapon.
Yeah, he's in superhuman mode here. He's basically it's a very octopus arms. The
Yeah,
playing is very reminiscent of Geek USA, which is one of the
yeah,
best drum fill
right.
arrangements I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, really great stuff from Smashing Pumpkins, and just they were masters of this kind of thing.
Right. Number 32, The White Stripes with Blackjack Davy, a traditional folk song, which is makes it a cover, and the B-side to Seven Nation Army from 2003. The B-side to Jack White's most famous song is a reworking of an old traditional Scottish folk ballad about a woman who leaves her husband to run away with a charming rogue of a man. But the chemistry between Jack and Meg White, who by this time had become an underratedly competent drummer,
Oh yeah.
is what drives this song into the heights of rock panacea. Only Jack White can take a Yankee Doodle style melody and transform it into a badass fuzz drenched riff. Chris?
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. Meg White's drumming on this thing is great. It just kind of captures the quirks of White's natural rhythms
Yeah.
here, and so really good stuff. And it's kind of funny that to me, when I heard it, I didn't know it was a Scottish folk ballad. To me, I thought it was a take on like a very apocalyptic Western cowboy theme.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like Frankie Lane could have sang that for like some John Wayne movie from the
Yeah.
50s. Like it could have been the theme song to Big Jake. One of those like over the top story songs. And this also could have worked on the style. I mean, it's a
Sure.
close cousin to that record, closer
Yeah.
cousin to that record than the Elephant, and
Right.
probably explains why it remained a B-side.
Right. Number 31, PJ Harvey. The Faster I Breathe, The Further I Go, B-side to The Wind from 1999. The single came out in 99. Miss Harvey is back with another slice of heavy as fuck, swampy, steamy blues rock that is so heavy and swampy and steamy that in no way could it have fit the album whose sessions it came from, that being 1998's Is This Desire, an album that saw Harvey delve into electronic beats and trip hop. It's too bad because this song would have found a perfect home on any of her earlier 1990s records. It's trancy, it's hypnotic, it's cathartic, it's Polly Jean at her most scintillating. Chris?
Big, giant, huge, fat ass riff.
Yeah.
And also, by the way,
Don't.
yeah, exactly. It's just a awesome riff, and she was very distinctive guitar player.
Yeah.
She just had that, in terms of her tones and tunings and all that, just very distinct. And this is just sort of orthodox Polly Jean. This is
Right.
also, by the way, on that 22 B-sides and demos collection for
Oh,
folks.
nice. Sweet.
Yeah, definitely go check that out, folks.
Yeah. Number 30, once again, Black Rebel Motorcycle Club with Feel It Now, the B-side to Weight of the World from 2005. The B-side to one of the singles off BRMC's finest album, in my opinion, 2005's Howl, is a masterclass of piano balladry that Coldplay would have pimped their mothers for. This was the period where the band were going away from their usually bombastic alternative rock style and delved into country, blues, and folk, all the while fine-tuning their songwriting chops to new levels of profundity. This short, haunting track is as stark as it gets, but needs nothing else to drive its pathos home. Chris?
Yeah, really pretty song, and it shows that they rocked, but they were also very capable of reaching tremendous melodic uh,
Right.
heights.
Yeah.
And this song is really, really interesting because it's got that acoustic loveliness, but it's got these subtle guitar highlights
Yeah.
that really kind of augment the arrangement and really give it more emotional depth.
Right.
And definitely, this is one of those songs that it's actually not on Spotify, folks. It's all these songs you can find on YouTube, but
Right.
this one and a couple of songs by REM that we're covering can be found exclusively on YouTube. So go check it out.
Right. Number 29, Arctic Monkeys with Seven, as in number seven, the B-side to When the Sun Goes Down from 2006. Remember when Arctic Monkeys were a good band?
I
I
do.
do. Nowadays, you can listen to the band whittle away with pretentious, generic, bland indie pop fluff full of cliche romantic relationship songs. But back in the noughties slash aughts, they were a stalwart, punky rock and roll band, one of the best British bands of that time and decade, and they weren't afraid to go balls out. On this sterling B-side, A Story of a Night Out Gone Wrong, the Arctics encapsulate all the hooky riffs, clever character sketches, and booming musicianship that characterized their early years into one song. Chris?
Yeah, pretty much. It's a rapid fire, rocked out 2 minute ditty. And
Yeah.
it's just really quirky and really fun with fun lyrics.
They were
And
such a fun band back in the day.
yeah, oh no, they were. Yeah, that 2006, 2007 period, they were one of the more fun bands in the
Yeah.
world. And
Yeah.
I've never been a huge Arctic Monkeys fan, but they are fun. I'll
Were
give
fun. Were.
were they were. Yeah, now they've gotten a little bit mopey dopey,
Yeah.
but back then they were mad fun, and this is a testament to that.
Yeah. Number 28, Pavement with No Tan Lines, the B-side to Shady Lane from 1997. Chris, you used to characterize Pavement's music as good music done badly,
I still
basically
do.
refer basically referring to their early lo-fi sound. Well, this track kills that theory
Yes,
by
it does.
proving that frontman Stephen Malkmus could shred on guitar whenever he felt like it. It's also a rhythmically complex song with its oddball time signature. Pavement's discography is long on excellent B-sides and EP tracks, and this is arguably their very best. Chris?
Yeah, I would say that it's up there too. I've always been a huge fan of this song as well, and it really shows Malcolm's quirks as a songwriter. I think it would have worked on the album. I mean, it has that kind of ironic sweetness that would be in the pocket of that record. Obviously, it's nowhere near as good as its as its A side,
Right.
which is one of the best songs of the last 30 years. Worth noting again, here's another deluxe version of Bright in the Corners, which was
Mm,
released in 2022 to commemorate its 25th anniversary. This is on deep dark part of the album. It's basically a box set, and so
yeah.
this is on that. But yeah, great song.
Number 27, Mudhoney with Sweet Young Thing Ain't Sweet No More, B-side to Touch Me I'm Sick from 1988. The grunge pioneers' debut single is one of the most ferocious, ass-kicking slices of rock music to ever come out of the 1980s, and its B-side is almost as good. Sludgy is the operative word here, and its mid-tempo grind and Steve Turner's demented slide guitar bring us the story of a young girl who falls from grace and out of favor with her conservative parents. No one does snotty vocals like Mark Arm. Chris?
No, not at all. So this is track 2 on the album Super Fuzz Big Muff.
No. Hold on. Superfuzz Big Muff is actually the 6 tracks after Sweet Young Thing Ain't Sweet No More. What you're referring to is like the compilation hybrid that they put out a few years later that starts
Okay.
off with Touch Me
Touch Me,
I'm
I'm
Sick,
sick.
then Sweet Young Thing, and Sweet
Yeah.
Young Thing, and then goes into the Super Fuzz Big Muff songs.
Okay, well that is thank you for that clarification. This is basically jumbo size Super Fuzz Big Muff.
Right.
But it's right there. But the version that you can find of this album on the streaming sites has the single.
Right.
Has the two songs from the single.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
guitars brought to you by Robitussin. Slowed,
Yeah.
stretched, and just
Down, down,
just
down.
really they're in a zone.
Yeah.
It's a very sticky. Like I said, Mark Arm really knew how to make a dark joke, and so
Yeah.
this is in dark joke land, and really the music matches the lyrics
Definitely.
for better
Yeah.
or worse, depending on your perspective.
For
So
all the better. Come on, Mudhoney are awesome.
yeah,
Number 26, Nirvana with Dive, the B-side to Sliver from 1990. Heartwarming is an adjective that is never used to describe a Nirvana song, but
yep,
that's exactly what Sliver is, in addition to being punchy, poppy, and infectious. For the B-side, though, they go back to the grunge depths with one of the best riffs Kurt Cobain ever came up with.
yeah.
Simple but effective guitar work was always the hallmark of the very best Nirvana songs, of which there were many, even their B-sides. Chris?
Heavy shit and deceptively great riff. It sneaks
Yeah,
up on you. Clearly, it's Grohl on drums. Some of the stuff on Incesticide, which is the B-sides collection that
right.
this can be found on. Some of that stuff, as I understand it, has Chad Canning on drums, but this is clearly Grohl. And
Yeah.
I think it's a cousin in spirit to the song "School" from Bleach, which
Yeah.
to me is one of their best, one of the top 10 Nirvana songs. I love that song. But this is kind of a cousin of that in terms of its scuzziness.
On this episode, we gave you our picks for rock music's 50 greatest B-sides. For the next episode, we're going to shift gears and bring you the sequel to our Birth of Hip Hop episode from last year. During the years 1980 through 85, this newborn genre experienced its growing pains. But these were positive growing pains, as many rappers and DJs, mostly in New York at this time, were shaping, defining, and setting the parameters for this music that would be explored, expanded upon, and stretched out by future generations of hip hop artists. We're going to examine key, important, and freaking great singles by the likes of Africa Bambaataa, Grandmaster Flash, Melly Mel, and the Furious Five, and then end by examining two huge signpost-shifting album releases by LL Cool J and Run DMC. Join us next time as the Curmudgeon Rock Report brings you Hip Hop Comes of Age.
That was the first half. Here comes the second half. Number 25 on the list of the greatest rock B-sides is
The Verve with Never Wanna See You Cry, the B-side to Lucky Man from 1997. When the British band The Verve started in the early 1990s, they were stargazing, psychedelic rockers. By the time of their commercial breakthrough and magnum opus, Urban Hymns, in 1997, they cut back on their earlier noise indulgences and became a stately modern rock band with a penchant for epic, sweeping ballads, and even scored an international hit single with Bittersweet Symphony. Their follow-up single, Lucky Man, carried with it a B-side of beguiling and emotionally resonant beauty that ranks among the most gorgeous, deeply moving ballads of the 1990s Britpop era. Chris?
Yeah, this is one of a couple of songs I actually wasn't familiar with before now, and
Yeah.
I'm sorry I wasn't because I think this song's even lovelier than Lucky Man, which is saying something because Lucky Man's a
Yeah.
pretty damn lovely song.
Yeah.
And this is just an opportunity to say again, poor Richard Ashcroft. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy
He deserved
decided
better.
he deserved to be a multi-time hit maker. I mean, he just was
Yeah.
so good, and then the one hit he gets, his royalties got stolen from him for over 20 years.
Fuck you, Alan Klein.
Yeah, yeah, seriously, fuck you, Alan Klein. I mean, it just got to the point where, like, literally, the story is he calls up Keith and Mick, or like Mick and Keith gave the blessing, and so
Yeah.
Ashcroft is finally making his royalties like way too late.
Right.
But also worth noting, this song just has a beautiful cello part on it. I mean,
Sure.
it just adds a hell of a lot of texture. I mean,
Right.
those sort of, mellotrons and cellos to me are always invited and always welcome because they bring out if it's a song is beautiful, cellos and mellotrons just make them that much more beautiful.
Right. And speaking of beautiful, number
Uh,
24, the Kinks are back with Polly, the B-side to Wonder Boy from 1968. Rock and roll tradition is full of lyrics about young people running away from home, looking for freedom and self-actualization and escape from conservative tradition. Well, on this splendid slice of vintage Kinks, Ray Davies upends that trope by telling the story of a young girl, probably a teenager, who
mhm.
runs away from home, learns that the outside world and quote unquote freedom isn't all it's cracked up to be, and returns home to her happy parents. In a way, it's a repost to the Beatles' She's Leaving Home from the previous year. It's a testament to Ray Davies' brilliance and empathy as a lyricist that he conveys this story without any of the sentimentality and self-righteous moralism that one would expect from such a theme. Add in a raucous, rowdy chorus that harkens back to traditional English music hall and theater, and that isn't trite at all or filled with any pastiche. And you have the Kinks' most brilliant B-side. Chris?
Yeah, that's a good point you just made that Ray Davies, when he didn't play it straight, he made that blatantly obvious, but most of the time
Right.
he played it straight.
Yeah.
Kind of like the song Low Budget. He's
Yeah.
definitely not playing it straight.
Yeah.
But on something like this, he's definitely playing it straight, and it's fun vocal delivery on the song and a classic Ray Davies melody. And one thing when people think about the Kinks, they think about the early guitar fuzz stuff,
Right.
and or they'll think about the guitar part to Picture Book, or some of those songs, or even like the guitar stuff or the acoustic guitar on Waterloo Sunset. They did some really beautiful piano tunes, and
Sure.
their piano songs are just they're par excellence.
Yeah.
And that is one definite underrated thing about the Kinks is the piano stuff. And so I really like this song a lot.
Yeah. Number 23, Slater Kinney with Everything, the B-side to Entertain from 2005. When its slow burn, feedback drenched intro, this song explodes and perfectly captures the essence of the cathartic, visceral energy and power that marks the best of Slater Kinney, especially when Janet Weiss was still manning the drum kit. This podcast's choice for the single greatest female rock and roll band of all time,
Yep,
Slater Kinney give us a B-side that is every bit the equal of any of the best tracks from the album whose sessions this came from,
The
2005's
Woods.
The Woods.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now this B song, this B side is it's the B side to one of the best songs of the entire
Yeah,
2000s
yeah,
rock songs, and so it just gets goodwill for that. Even if it was mediocre, it would still get goodwill for that. But hey, it turns out to be a great damn song.
right.
Carrie Brownstein is in her glory as a guitar, and great yelping vocals from Corin Tucker on the
Right.
chorus. And so it's just and like you said, Janet Weiss was just she's like King Kong on drums. I mean, she's
Yeah.
just awesome drummer, and so
Yeah.
everything comes together here. I could see why it's a B side because it doesn't quite have the same. Uh, it's because the Woods. When I think the Woods, I think of the word grandeur.
Yeah.
Everything on that record has grandeur. This doesn't
Sure.
quite have grandeur. It crunches and it booms, but it doesn't have
Right.
quite have grandeur. So I
Right.
can understand why it didn't make the final cut for the album.
Right. Right. Number 22, Nirvana again, with Even in His Youth, B-side to Smells Like Teen Spirit from 1991. As soon as Nirvana busted out of the major record label gates with the album Nevermind and the single Smells Like Teen Spirit, the band, and Kurt Cobain in particular, they were heralded as spokespeople for a generation and the musical expression of disaffected youth. The B-side to that monumental single is that expression incarnate,
Yep.
with Cobain singing a character sketch of a young man who wasted his youth trying to live up to his parents' lofty ideals and still falling short. The blunt lyrics and Cobain's vocal delivery make the track memorable enough, but augmented with a typically great Cobain-esque melody and tight songcraft, you have one of the greatest B-sides of all time. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I would actually put this a little higher on the list. I'd have put it up in the teens.
Wow.
Again, this is the lead song on disc two of the deluxe edition of Nevermind. And so that's a good place to find it. Tremendous song. Love the melody. And one thing about this, the B-sides that came out of Nevermind is that clearly Andy Wallace did not mix them
Yeah,
because the sound is way muddier and way grittier and way dirtier on these
yeah,
B-sides. They're like more akin to something from Bleach or even In Utero.
yeah.
They have a roughness to them that I know that Cobain is famously was never a fan of Andy Wallace's mix, which I think he's out of his mind. I think that's one of the best mix jobs in the history of rock and roll.
At the
Uh,
time, he loved it. It was later on because it got so big, he felt a little embarrassed about it.
Yeah, because yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I guess that makes sense. But for whatever reason, Andy Wallace clearly didn't touch these B-sides because again, they just have like way more of a
Mm,
way more of a punk vibe to them than a power pop vibe,
yeah,
which the Wallace's mix provided so
right.
beautifully. But so that's worth mentioning. Uh, but yeah, great song.
Number 21, Radiohead with Polyethylene Parts 1 and 2, the B-side to Paranoid Android from 1997. Radiohead have a pretty good history with producing worthy B-sides, keeping in the tradition of great British bands. This one is, in my opinion, hands down the best of all of them, of all the Radiohead B-sides, with its surging, soaring, almost majestic verses and chord progressions, oddly without a real chorus. And it sounds more like an outtake from the Bends than OK Computer. Chris?
Yeah, you must be reading my notes again. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is nothing comes close. I mean, nothing on OK Computer comes as close to evoking the bends
Yeah.
as this song. And also, it's worth noting it's a complete 180 from its A side.
Yeah.
Paranoid Android is it's bombastic, but it's more sort of in the Queen operatic sense. Here, it's just like
Right.
straightforward bash out bombastic rock.
Yeah.
It starts off with that sort of quiet, which I guess is part one, this kind of quiet intro thing,
Right.
and then it just comes into this like soaring arena rock anthem.
Mm,
So,
right.
yeah. So you talk about juxtaposition. Like you have there's an A side and then a B side, and yeah, so polar opposites.
Right. Yeah. Number 20, The Clash with Pressure Drop, a cover of Toots and the Maytals, the B-side to English Civil War from 1978. The Clash were never shy about their love of reggae, dub music, or any kind of music that came from Jamaica. What's particularly striking about this cover is the pure, unadulterated joy that the band, and particularly Joe Strummer with his bombast in general, imbue the track with. It rocks with an urgency, energy, and authenticity that's better than anything on the second half of the album, Give 'Em Enough Rope, making you wonder how much the album would have improved with this song's inclusion. Chris?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, this is just evidence for casual fans that Guns of Brixton wasn't just a vanity one-off.
Yes.
This just makes the reggae influence clear as day
Yeah.
by covering Toots and the Mayals. And hey, find this one on a 2013 box set that was released called Sound System, which
Mm,
has all kinds of odds and sods from the Clash on it.
yeah. Toots and the Maytals, not the males.
The Maytals, the Mayals. Oh, that's the Blues Breakers guy. Okay, yeah.
Number 19, The Jam with Carnaby Street, B-side to All Around the World from 1977. Throughout his time in the dreadful Style Council and in his solo career, Paul Weller has always come off like a cut rate bargain bin Ray Davies. But at his best, when he was in the Jam, his socio-cultural commentaries on class with their political undercurrents would have made the Kinks mastermind proud. On this rocking track, Weller bemoans the social gentrification of not just a location, but an entire scene that was at the forefront of youthful countercultural insurrection at one time. It's a bit naive. Weller was 19 years old when he wrote it, after all, but you can definitely relate to the feeling of loss of something that you once loved and cherished. Chris?
Okay, song is featured on a 2017 box set called 1977. Gee, I wonder why it's called that.
Yeah,
So this song ain't that's entertainment, but it's
yeah,
still pretty damn good.
yeah.
Great 70s punk energy, and I think hints of very early new wave. Sans the keyboards,
Mm,
obviously, but
yeah,
it has this bridge feel between the punk of the streets and the new wave of the
right.
clubs. And so
Yeah,
I would say that it's proto primitive new wave in my
right.
mind.
Yeah. Number 18, Nirvana with Curmudgeon.
Our
The
national anthem.
Yeah, the B-side to Lithium from 1992. The last Nirvana track on this list is the very song that this podcast named itself after. And appropriately, it's arguably the band's greatest B-side. Nothing can beat that incendiary, corrosive riff that introduces the song before Dave Grohl crashes in with his savage drum attack. Cobain's lyrics are indecipherable through his throaty wail, but when it rocks with this much conviction and intensity, does it even matter? Chris?
Yeah, if you didn't know any better, you would think that this was an in utero outtake
Yeah,
instead of a Nevermind outtake.
yeah,
It's almost as if Cobain wanted it on this single with Lithium, just as
yeah,
kind of a commentary about lithium. And sort of
yeah,
saying, yeah, that I'm doing for the kiddos. Here, this is I'm doing for the junkies.
yeah.
It has that kind of, so the juxtaposition is pretty striking. Again, it's another one of those side A, side B type of deals.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Number 17, Oasis with The Master Plan, B-side to Wonderwall from 1995. In a musical movement, Britpop, that self-consciously evoked Britain's pop music past, no band embraced the ethos of the B-side like Oasis.
Nope.
Collect all their B-sides from 1994 through 96, put them together, and you have easily one of their three best albums.
Yep.
This epic anthemic ode to guilt-free self-fulfillment is one of Noel Gallagher's finest vocal performances, stealing the thunder from little brother Liam, and answers the question, what would it sound like if mid-1960s Burt Bacharach had produced Sgt. Pepper's instead of George Martin? Chris?
Okay, that's an interesting one. I wouldn't have thought of, but that's good. And actually, this song is on their third best record, which is a B-sides comp called "The Master Plan," which came out in 1998.
Yeah.
And so the only thing I can figure as to why this didn't make "What's the Story" Morning Glory is because "Don't Look Back in Anger"
Yeah.
was better. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're going to pick a Noel lead vocal, you got to pick "Don't Look Back in Anger." I mean, that's one of the best songs like ever.
Yeah.
This is a really great song too, but it ain't that good. And
Yeah.
that's got to be the only reason it didn't make the record because it's better than like half the stuff on What's the Story. Yeah, What's the Story is a great album, but this song is better than half the stuff on that. And it's actually it's an ideal B-side to Wonderwall, so it really works well.
Yeah. Number 16, Modest Mouse with Whatever You Breathe Out, I Breathe In, B-side to Broke from 1996. If you're only familiar with Modest Mouse from the Naughties and the albums Good News for People Who Love Bad News and We Were Dead Before the Ship Even Sank, you're really missing out on the
Yes, you are.
raw, searing, emotional intensity of early Modest Mouse and their innovative, thoroughly original approach to post-Pixies alternative rock. On this B-side, Isaac Brock wearily details the toll taken by a crippling codependent relationship and ratchets up the intensity with a soaring, cathartic chorus. Lovely guitar work, too. Chris?
Yeah, very lovely guitar work. This found its way onto the 2000 album Building Nothing Out of Something.
Yeah, it's a compilation,
Yeah,
outtakes and stuff like
yeah,
that.
compilation that they did that, but that's where you can find it. Great ode to depression. Well,
Yeah.
maybe not so great, but you know what I mean. It's it's
Yeah.
it's definitely very accurate. So the
Yeah.
lyrics definitely resonate with me. All the stuff about not being able to get out of bed and
Yeah.
the hours becoming days and things like that.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's a relatable song. It's kind of it's an emotional song, and it's an experience to listen to it. I would say if you're in a bad mood, don't listen to it
Yeah.
because it'll probably put you in a worse mood. But yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying because it is so true to
Mm,
it's depression. It's like clinical depression in musical form.
right. Number 15, The Smiths with Please, Please, Please Let Me Get What I Want, B-side to William, It Was Really Nothing from 1984. You would imagine that the best British singles band of the 1980s would have sterling B-sides, but in fact, their B-side quality was inconsistent. By far the best of the bunch, though, is this track, which clocks in at only 1 minute and 50 seconds. But in that short time, Johnny Marr beguiles the listener with his gorgeous chord progressions on acoustic guitar while tickling with his elliptical lead guitar line. It's easy to hate Morrissey now for the douchebag that he is,
Yep.
but at his peak with the Smiths, no British rock or pop singer could convey longing and crippling depression that anyone could identify with like he could. A truly heart-meltingly beautiful song.
Yeah.
Chris?
Gorgeous set of lyrics, and like you said, gorgeous tune. It's actually one of my favorite Smith songs.
Mm.
Worth noting, it's the closing song to the album "Hatful of Hollow," and
That's a compilation in of itself, too.
that's a compilation as well, which is
Yeah.
funny because "William, It Was Really Nothing" is the first song on that compilation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these are the
Because that was
bookends.
originally it was originally a standalone single, and then they
Yeah,
they they they, they
they ta
plopped it on
yeah,
Hatful
they
of
tacked
Hollow.
that on, which is the story for a lot of these for
Yeah.
a lot of these songs. Worth
Right.
noting, this is the shortest song on the
Yeah.
on the list, and a really great economical use of a minute and 50 seconds. They really they're in, out, and just really effective and affecting. Yeah, one of my favorite Morrissey lyrics.
Yeah.
There's which, by the way, to tell you the truth, is a short list. I'm not a huge Smiths fan.
Number 14, The Stone Roses with The Hardest Thing in the World, B-side to Elephant Stone from 1988. We stay in Manchester, UK for the next band. With the single Elephant Stone, the Stone Roses had properly commenced their full immersion into ecstasy-tinged dance rock. The B-side, however, is a sticky sweet piece of rock candy heaven. The riff, the slinky bass line, the irresistible verses, the heavenly chorus, the out of nowhere bridge. It's a stone cold perfect pop song. And this would be, to this day, most bands' best song. Chris?
Yeah, no doubt. And again, it ratchets it down the electronics, but it at
Yeah.
its heart, it's definitely a very Stone Roses song.
Yeah.
Can be found on a 1992 compilation called "Turns into Stone,"
Mm.
which kind of that was sort of their Bon Voyage record
Yeah.
or volley because
Yeah.
at that point they were done. But yeah, pretty song, but also edgy. I mean, really
Yeah.
edgy and tense
Right.
song. It's pretty but tense. And
Right.
so, those are in some ways, my favorite kind of songs. Like think like U2's One, pretty
Right.
but tense.
Yeah.
So it's in that vein. Speaking of
Speaking of
U2,
U2,
yeah,
number 13, U2 with Dancing Barefoot, a Patti Smith cover, the B-side to When Love Comes to Town from 1989. Fuck you, U2 haters, they're back.
yes,
This steaming, sultry cover of a Patti Smith song is, to my mind, way better than the original. With Bono's skillful, passionate croon and the Edge's appropriately stinging, nasty guitar providing the necessary juxtaposition, after listening to it, you realize that this should have made the cut for the album Rattle and Hum.
yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, it definitely should have made the cut for Rattle and Hum. And I actually have to disagree with you. I don't think it's better than the original. I think the original is one of the best rock songs ever written.
Really?
Uh,
I think
I,
Bono's vocals are better.
Yeah, I love the song, and I love Patti Smith's treatment of it. It's very understated, but it's a powerful song, and but it's appropriate for you too because yes, I mean it is in Bono's wheelhouse as a vocalist, and definitely in Edge's wheelhouse as a guitar player. The lead lines capture the melody on this thing incredibly, incredibly well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And,
Number
and it's worth mentioning, it's on their album, The Best of 1980 to 1990,
yeah,
which was a box set that actually had it was a ballyhooed release back in the early 90s. It got a lot of press and sold very well.
late 90s.
Late 90s, but I just
Yeah,
remember it was an event
yeah,
when it came out.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Number 12, REM with Arms of Love, a cover of a Robin Hitchcock song, B-side to Man on the Moon from 1992. REM's greatest B-side is also, in my mind, their greatest cover. The arrangement is extremely simple, just acoustic guitar strumming and Peter Buck's lead line gently coming in and out. However, it's Michael Stipe's impassioned and heavenly vocal delivery that give the song its emotional resonance. No band, or in fact, no singer, could blend sadness and hope the way REM did in their prime. And it's easy to forget how powerful and evocative of a singer Stipe was at his peak. No wonder this came from the sessions from their greatest album, Automatic for the People. Chris?
Oh, and it's a song that perfectly fits where the band was musically during that Automatic for the People era.
Right,
And it's a
right.
perfect B-side for Man on the Moon. I mean,
Yeah,
if you didn't know it was Robin Hitchcock, you would have thought Bill Berry wrote it.
yeah.
It's very much in his style. And I gotta give a shout out to the baseball stadium organ in the middle of the song.
Yeah.
It makes me think that "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" is about to bust out.
Well, apparently Peter Buck is a big baseball fan, so it's
Yeah, there you
not
go.
surprising at all. Number 11, Joy Division with Dead Souls, the B-side to Atmosphere from 1980. How the hell was this song the B-side and Atmosphere the A-side?
Oh, I know. Yeah,
Listeners of the Gen X variety might know this song more by the cover that Nine Inch Nails did for the soundtrack to the movie The Crow back in
yeah.
1994. But make no mistake, as good a job as Trent Reznor did with it, the original is far superior. With its long intro where the band intensifies the tension and drummer Stephen Morris's tribal drums setting an enchanted spell. Singer Ian Curtis soon comes in with his Jim Morrison as vampire croon. When the track blasts into its anthemic chorus and monstrous guitar riff, you have no choice but to admit that this is one of the best rock songs and definitely B-sides that you've ever heard. Chris?
Yeah, agreed. Find this on a 2010 comp called Substance, which collects
Mm,
Joy Division songs between 1977 and 1980.
yeah.
Just a really cool vibe, and it's got that beat that just grows hypnotic over the
Yeah.
course of 5 minutes. It just gets more. It really, really draws you in. And I will say this: listening to this song several times in the course of preparing for this episode may just trigger a Joy Division phase for me.
Well,
Uh,
they should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't know why they still aren't.
Yeah, that's really just kind of befuddling. I guess there's no fans of Curtis or Bernard Sumner. Bernard Sumner must have pissed somebody off. Best I
Yeah.
can figure.
Number 10, The White Stripes with Jolene, a Dolly Parton cover, the B-side to Hello Operator from 2000. When we did an episode a while back about the greatest rock cover versions of all time, I really wanted to put this on it, and quite highly as well. There's nothing wrong with Dolly Parton's original, but there's a majestic anthemic power and haunting quality to what the Stripes do with it that leaves their version, in my opinion, unmatched. A song originally sung from a female perspective and then transferred to a male perspective also gives it an intriguing dynamic. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. Jack White really does a great job with this song. I like it better than the original, although the original is pretty rousing. It's one
Yeah,
of Dolly's most rousing songs,
yeah,
and one of her better straight vocal performances.
right.
I've come to love Dolly Parton as a vocalist because there's a lot of wink, wink,
Yeah.
nudge, nudge, and she's a
Mhm.
very, very funny. She doesn't get as much credit for her humor
Yeah.
and a dark sense of humor, but anyway, this Stripe song is really, really, really great cover. And it goes really well with Hello Operator because you get like blues on one side and country on the other as filtered
Right.
through the Jack White thing.
Oh,
And
rock the fuck out country.
yeah, absolutely. Rock the fuck out country. And yeah, this is one of those songs, by the way, that one there was one reason that Meg White was an underrated drummer because she was an inconsistent drummer.
Yeah.
This one she's about a step too quick,
Yeah.
and so but it has actually kind of a funny effect to it. I mean, if it's a if it's a revenge ballad or a revenge fantasy, then maybe being a beat off does hey beat off doesn't is not so bad.
Yeah. Number 9, Oasis with Come On, Feel the Noise, a cover of the band Slade, B-side to Don't Look Back in Anger from 1996. This song was also in our top 10 of greatest rock cover versions. And in that episode, I mentioned a few minutes earlier, and here it is again. Yes, we both feel that strongly about it. Liam Gallagher's vocal delivery takes a song about partying and transforms it into a song about having your very life and existence depend on rock and roll. For a song that was originally a 1970s glam rock song and later a cheesy hair metal song by Quiet Riot, Oasis sludge it up with a grungy groove that reeks, in a good way, of the appropriate attitude and menace that the song deserves. Chris?
Yeah, I still think Quiet Riot's version is better.
Oh,
Uh,
fuck off.
no,
Get the hell out of here.
only because it kind of captures it's kind of a schmaltzy song, and Quiet Riot really
Oasis take away the schmaltz in this song.
yeah, but Quiet Riot turns the schmaltz up to 11, which for me works better. I just think it's fun. We had the same debate on the covers song episode a year ago, but that's all I'll say. From here, by the way, starting from number 10, I think, and I meant to say this a little earlier, that the divide between the top 10 and the rest of the list is pretty stark. And I think that these top 10s, at this point, we can stop calling them B-sides and start calling them co-A sides
Yeah.
because they're just classic songs that stand on their own. Now, again, the Oasis version of Come On Feel the Noise is truly great. I prefer Quiet Riot's version because the song itself is just kind of, is kind of schlocky. And so if you're going to have a schlocky song, you might as well go schlocky to the end.
Absolute blasphemy. Anyway, number 8, The Beatles with Baby You're a Rich Man, the B-side to All You Need Is Love from 1967. I bet you all were wondering when the Beatles would make their appearance, eh?
Yeah, no, they're here.
This is perhaps pop music's most famous example of the usage of the clavioline, a forerunner to the modern synthesizer.
Yep.
Paul McCartney provided the chorus, but otherwise, this is a John Lennon song through and through. Like the best of Lennon songs, the lyrics are ambiguous and can even be called ambivalent, addressing the then hippie movement of the time, seemingly praising them, but actually slyly accusing them of their exclusivity. Throw in the allusion to celebrity entertainers and their snobbishness, then the chorus makes sense when it makes the point that we're all rich men and women, regardless of how cool or how much money we have. Lovely, inclusive, clever, and acerbic all at once. It's a trick Lennon excelled at. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a neat trick that he kind of gets away with social commentary in the verses and sing-songy clap-handsiness in the chorus. Actually, it's one of the
that was Lennon's shtick. That was his thing.
Yeah, it was good. But here he does it as well as anywhere else in the catalog. And I think that the sing-songy quality of this, it's about as sing-songiest song on the back half of the Beatles catalog. Like, obviously he got more serious and more artsy as he went along. And, this is kind of almost like in the beatific spirit of doing a cover of Please Mr. Postman, which, in Lennon's song is the epitome of irony.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Number 7, Pearl Jam with Footsteps, one of the 2 B-sides to Jeremy from 1992. Like I said just now, this is the first of 2. This will be the first of 2 consecutive Pearl Jam songs on this list. Both of them B-sides to the Jeremy maxi-single on CD, as it was back then. So we thought it was appropriate to order them that way, put them back to back. Haunting, tortured, almost deathly in its pathos, Eddie Vedder howls his pain after what I think is a broken romantic relationship to a simple accompaniment of just acoustic guitar. It's one of the greatest examples of impassioned, impressionist white boy blues ever recorded. Chris?
Oh, I agree with that. And a couple of notes on this song. One, it's been regarded. Legend has it it's a sequel to the song Once, or
Mm,
it's basically telling the story of the same protagonist
yeah.
at a different point on his journey of self-discovery and dealing with issues with his mom.
Mm,
And so there's that. Also, a testament. Here's a neat exercise that I encourage everyone to do. So, Footsteps obviously is Eddie Vedder's take on Stone Gossard wrote the music
yeah.
to Footsteps, but in 1991, earlier in 1991, the Temple of the Dog. If you remember, Temple of
Yeah.
the Dog was the
Right.
supergroup that had
Members of
Chris,
Pearl
yeah,
Jam and
Chris
Soundgarden. Yeah.
Soundgarden. Yeah, it was Chris Cornell and Matt Cameron from Soundgarden, and then the guitarists and Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam. This song had earlier life as a Chris Cornell ditty
Mm,
called
yeah.
"Times of Trouble." And so
Yeah.
if you want to have an exercise, which is also a great song, by the way, but it's the exact same piece of music or the exact same riff and
Right.
structure and the same piece of music by Stone Gossard. But it's just kind of an interesting and a neat exercise to hear it in Eddie Vedder's hands and his with his sensibilities, and then in Chris Cornell's hands with his sensibilities. So
Yeah.
I encourage everybody to do that.
Yeah. Number six, like I said, like I alluded to earlier, Pearl Jam, Yellow Ledbetter. Again, one of the B sides to Jeremy from 1992. It's rare that a B side is one of a band's greatest and most popular ballads among their devoted following. But that's exactly
Uh,
what Yellow Ledbetter is. Guitarist Mike McCready is an admitted Jimi Hendrix disciple, and Pearl Jam has never since sounded as Hendrixy as they do here, and a damn good job of approximating the Hendrix vibe as well. Not the heavy rockin' side of Hendrix, mind you, the soulful bluesy side of Hendrix's guitar playing. Contrary to the myriad ways the lyrics have been interpreted, it's actually an anti-war song about losing a loved one to a war and them never coming back. Chris?
yeah, Jeremy, Footsteps, and Yellow Ledbetter. That's one of the greatest maxi singles of all time, ain't it?
Maybe the
Uh,
greatest.
maybe the greatest. And this is one of those instances where it's a B-side that is still in heavy rotation on quote unquote modern rock stations
Right.
and even seeps into some classic rock stations. It's played all the time. I'll say this, by the way, that I don't think it's it. Yeah, McCready shows his Hendrix influence, but I think he shows it more pronouncedly on present tense 5 years
Mm.
later from the album No Code. I think it shows up even better there. But clearly McCready was an acolyte of Little Wing, and it's pretty. It's just
Little
real.
Wing is very much an inspiration for this song.
Oh yeah, and but this is just a really pretty song, and it's also Eddie Vedder is at his most mumbly. I've never quite understood what the hell he's saying. Like you
Yeah.
said, the thank you for the deciphering the lyrics and telling me what it's about because most of the time I hear yeah. So that's my impression of Vedder singing Yellow Ledbetter. There's not a whole lot of actual like enunciated words going on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I think he was drunk when he recorded it. But
Probably,
anyway,
probably.
number five, Led Zeppelin with Hey Hey, What Can I Do? B-side to Immigrant Song from 1970. Nowadays, with plenty of hindsight and legacy building, it's easy to admire and appreciate the depth, breadth, and versatility of Led Zeppelin's discography. However, in their day, especially the early years, they were derided by critics as lunk-headed practitioners of cock rock. When they emerged toward the end of 1970 with their third album, with its entire second half devoted to acoustic blues and folk excursions, it was a bit shocking to both their fans and critics. This lovely, sweet, soulful B-side came from that album's sessions and to this day stands as one of Zeppelin's most famous, among many, 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 and greatest acoustic songs. Chris?
Yeah, I think it's like right up there with their best acoustic songs for sure. I think it's also better than half of anything on Led Zeppelin 3. This also is, it found a light of day, by the way, in what I think is the greatest B-sides collection ever released called Coda
Yeah.
from 1982. This is post John Bonham's death. And so they're just kind of emptying out the coffers there.
B-sides and outtakes, really. Yeah.
Yeah, B-sides and outtakes. Uh, And really, this could be Exhibit A to prove that Robert Plant is one of the best vocalists in rock history and
Yeah.
that he's more than a screamer. There's just an awesome vocal range on display here as far as how he sings the chorus and the low notes and then getting up to the really, really high notes
Yeah.
in well, the verse and chorus, the softs, the lows, the highs,
Yeah.
and the louds and the softs. It's an amazing vocal performance by Plant.
All right. Number 4, Oasis with Acquiesce, the B-side to Some Might Say from 1995. Like with the previous song by Led Zeppelin, this B-side is considered one of the finest overall songs Oasis ever wrote and recorded. And those who consider that are not wrong. Starting with a guitar riff so immediate and arresting, it sounds like it's existed forever. Liam Gallagher's verse vocals trade with Noel's chorus vocals and contribute to the most soaring, transcendent sing-along of all sing-along songs. In most other bands' hands, the lyrics may come across as trite and sentimental, but the Gallagher brothers' delivery is so authentic and convincing that it sounds like a sermon from Mount Rockmore. Chris?
Mount Rockmore. This is my favorite Oasis song by a mile. It's a B-side.
Yeah.
It might be their best song. Rocks absolute balls. And Noel on the chorus is just iconic with his phrasing. And like you said, the joy and the authenticity
Right.
comes through. And I will say this, he does a better believe than
Yeah.
Cher.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Number 3, The Beatles with Rain, the B-side to Paperback Writer from 1966. The Beatles' first true foray into psychedelia is one of their very finest, and in fact, one of the finest single psychedelic rock recordings of all time, with backward tape loops, Ringo Starr's drumming slowed down via tape manipulation, and a sharp, crystalline guitar sound that would epitomize most of the Revolver album. The band concocted a sound that changed rock and the overall pop landscape. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're definitely one of their first and one of their best experiments with tape manipulation. From my understanding, at least the drums, if not the whole song, was recorded at a much faster tempo, and then
It was, yeah.
and then
You can find it on YouTube.
and slowed and stretched. I mean, I can imagine when it's sped up like that, it probably sounds like something from like their 1962
Yeah.
period. And that's pretty impressive considering that it still counts as an up-tempo ditty.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they really went fast
Yeah.
in the original. So find this, by the way, on the deluxe remixed version of Revolver, which was a big event back in 2022 with Giles Martin and his new take on the mixes for Revolver. And so this is part of those proceedings. Great, great, great song.
Number 2, The Beatles again with I Am the Walrus, B-side to Hello Goodbye from 1967. One of the darkest, heaviest, most haunting, and downright eeriest songs in the entire Beatles catalog, is also one of their catchiest, most melodic, and most earwormy memorable. It was
Yeah.
also quite unbelievably relegated to a B-side.
Yeah.
John Lennon's seemingly gibberish, self-consciously surrealist lyrics took aim at critics who accused the band of having subliminal messages in their songs, and it was understandable why producer George Martin thought it might not have been suitable as an A-side. Then again, when the A-side was Paul McCartney's childish gibberish of Hello Goodbye, I Am the Walrus, by comparison, sounds intellectual and downright esoteric. But what makes Walrus special is the soup of music in which
Yeah.
the song is swirling around, akin to being submerged in rainbow-colored water spiked with LSD. As a sonic soundscape of conventional instruments and studio sonic wizardry, it's one of the single greatest songs of the 1960s and of all time. Chris?
Oh, absolutely agree. Remarkable, remarkable achievement. Also, one of the greatest sets of lyrics ever committed to tape. Even if it is surrealist, or
Yeah.
even if it wasn't surrealist, it still is just engaging.
It's the dark, unsettling imagery that it evokes.
Yeah,
That's
I don't know.
that's the
Yeah,
kick to it.
absolutely. It's just, one, and like you said, it's just there's one great touch after another, as far as the sonic soup, and just it's earwormy as hell. You've got the mellotron loops, you've got the horn, the little horn riff in the background, you've got the alarm clock and stretching string transition, sitting in an English garden.
Yeah, yeah,
You've got the woo on the
yeah,
chorus,
yeah.
and you've got the Joker laughs. You've got the weird conversational bit at the end. This might actually be the most efficient 4.5 minute song ever recorded, because there is a remarkable amount of shit going on,
Yeah,
and packed in, and it's an absolute just cornucopia. It's a kaleidoscope of a song, and just incredible.
yeah. And finally,
Number one,
number one,
drum roll.
the Beatles again with Revolution, the B-side to Hey Jude from 1968. One of the most snarling rockers in the Beatles catalog, as well as being one of John Lennon's cleverest yet politically ambivalent lyrics, is the Curmudgeon Rock Report's choice for the greatest rock B-side of all time. While being stereotypically known as the rocker in the band, as opposed to Paul McCartney being the balladeer, Lennon's original vision for this song was the slowed down bluesy vamp that ended up on the White Album later that year. According to many Beatle biographers, whose account corroborates, Lennon wanted it to be slow so listeners could focus on the lyrics. Yet, having been earmarked as the B-side to Hey Jude, a big bloated sing-along ballad, both McCartney and George Harrison argued to Lennon that this song needed to be rocked up and rocked out for the sake of contrast. Lennon agreed, and the result was a track that proved the Beatles were capable of being in the same room as heavy rock pioneers at the time, such as Jimi Hendrix, Cream, and The Who. Lennon's exquisite vocal delivery of his pacifist lyrics, Lennon supporting the idea of political revolution, but in no way if violence is involved, added to the song's stunning impact, making it not just one of the defining anthems of 1960s rock, but one of the single greatest recorded moments in rock history. Chris?
Absolutely. There you go, folks. One of the best rock and roll songs ever created was a B-side. And
Yeah,
for what it's worth, I think this is the greatest A-side, B-side single in
yeah,
rock history. I mean, you can't argue with Hey Jude on one side and Revolution on the other.
I know.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's just astonishing.
yeah,
And most famously, in terms of where to find it, it's most famously included on the Beatles' 1967 to 1970 album.
yeah,
That's the one with the blue
yeah,
the blue
right.
cover. Which to me, if I'm being honest, it's the most seminal album for me in my personal history as a rock and roll geek iconoclast.
Mm,
And I think that this is the band at its most synergistic. It's not really a John song. It's not really a Paul song. It's a Beatles song.
mm.
And it's top shelf at that. I mean, in that way, it kind of shares kinship and with She Loves You and some of the songs from '64 in that way. You can just tell that the band was having a blast playing that song. That
Yeah, yeah,
it's just a fun, just a rousing take on the song. And yeah, Paul and George were right. Rev it up,
yeah.
because I'm not a huge fan of Revolution One, as it's called on the White Album. I think it's a little too corny, doo-woppy for my tastes. Um, and so yeah, but this is definitely remarkable. It belongs at number one, which is kind of funny. When I was listening to Acquiesce this morning before we recorded, I said that's got to be number one, and then I said to myself, "What am I nuts?"
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it can't be. I mean, the top three is obviously the top three here with
Yeah.
Revolution, I Am the Walrus, and Rain. So the Beatles are the kings forever and ever, the kings of the B-side. And with that said, folks, please join our curmudgeonly community on Facebook. With its businesses picked up there. Arturo just released his 2001 list of studio albums. 2002 is imminent. And so join us there at Curmudgeon Rock, or excuse me, facebook.com/group/Curmudgeon Rock. Also, drop us a line if you think that there's a B-side that we missed, or if you disagree with our choices for number 1, or hey, even our choice for number 17. Reach out to us at curmudgeonrock@gmail.com. We are no longer on Twitter, and we're trying to find a home. It probably will end up being Blue Sky, but we'll keep you posted on that. And yes, folks, in the link to this episode, you may have noticed there is a hyperlink there. It is to a Spotify playlist that features 47 of the 50 songs on this list, and so you can enjoy that as an accompaniment as you're listening to and revisiting this episode.